Hey everyone, we have a special update for you today regarding the trade show industry for 2021 and beyond. My name is Andrew Hurst. With me today is
Tom Morgenstern, Ops Manager at ARC Transportation.
And
Pleasure to be here, definitely. Sorry.
Absolutely. No.
I love it. Love the opportunity to talk about the trade show industry.
Sure. So obviously we're excited. We're jumping into this thing. Tom, tell me a little bit about if I was shipping freight into a trade show a year and a half ago, right? My experience is going to be a lot different than today. Can you walk me through maybe why that would be, what has happened in the last year and a half in terms of logistics and the challenges it's been facing?
Yeah, I mean, logistics has definitely changed in multiple ways in the last year and a half or so. I mean, we've had shortages of supply. Everybody's feeling that just in shipping, but also the ports are getting bottlenecked where supplies aren't coming in. They're sitting out. Ocean containers are sitting out in the ocean. Can't get their supplies in. We don't have enough people really working the ports. We also don't have enough trucks to drive to deliver all the freight. So we're this massive shortage in the trade show industry, or in the logistics, is going to affect the trade show industry.
Yeah, and now that is, I think, so much more prevalent when you start looking at carriers that predominantly were in trade show and have either made changes to their strategy regarding trade show or what they'll allow on their networks. Can you talk a little bit about if I ship to the trade show now, if I go to try to use those same carriers, what's my experience going to be like?
Yeah, since trade shows have been basically gone for a year and a half, these carriers had to fill it with something else. So they filled it with just normal freight, going from dock to dock, machinery, all that kind of stuff. And they've learned to like it quite a bit. They've learned that they like the boxed, 48 cubed shipments. They don't like the crazy crates that are 102 long, 102 high. And so there's limitations now that some carriers are putting on their freight. So they're not going to accept it, or they're going to charge you, exorbitant surcharges and stuff like that.
So you're saying that we're getting additional surcharges on stuff like the 102 tall crates that are pretty prevalent in the trade show industry. People are either refusing them, or they're just charging crazy surcharges on them.
Yeah. So, there's definitely carriers that are just saying, no, we no longer accept that. Or there's carriers that are also saying that, like, hey, we will accept it, but it's going to be, maybe $200, $300 extra on the bill just for that one piece.
Just for that one piece. Wow.
Yeah.
So if I'm shipping to a trade show and I have these 102 tall crates, what do I do? Do I have, how do I know what carrier is going to take my freight, or what my cost is going to be associated with it?
Yeah, I think the important thing is always just ask beforehand, before the day you need to ship. The pre-planning of the trade show industry is what's going to be needed now. We got to talk, weeks in advance of what your size of freight is going to happen. Talk with the forwarder like us, or any other shipper that you're working with, to be able to see, hey, how are we going to go about moving this? Do we need to move it the dedicated route? Because 102s moving on 53s is pretty common. Or, hey, LTL wise, what carriers can I and can I not use for 102s? So it's important just to have that conversation ahead of time. Be able to send emails out, just be like asking, what do I need to do?
Yeah, that's great. I think the biggest thing is the limitations associated with those types of shipments, whether it's space, capacity, timing, whatever it might be. I think it all can be summed up pretty easily with communicate. Yeah. And communicate in a way that there's honesty and transparency as much as possible, because the rate is going to be what the rate is. And I think that's what we've seen is, whether you want to pay the surcharge or not is immaterial, because nobody wants to pay these surcharges.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous. But you're going to have to. And there's certain carriers who are trying to push people away from giving them this freight. You kind of touching it. They've built these networks now where we've got, capacity shortages, human capacity shortage, truck capacity shortage, where they've got their networks filled up. They're profitable, right? So they're the most profitable year in history of a lot of LTL companies, or just transportation in general. Because they're picking and choosing the freight, right? They're not going after the low margin freight just to be in that part of the business.
We've seen the shift, right? Where shippers used to be in control and giving the freight, and the carriers have now been the ones in control. They can refuse all the freight because they're profitable and they're moving the freight they want to move. It's basic freight,
Yeah.
and they don't want to take anything that's over length, the harder for their dock workers to do, harder for their drivers to handle. But none of that stuff, they're restricting it. So
yeah. So tell me what this 96-inch. I heard you talking the other day about a 96-inch limit on a few carriers where, we talked about the tall crates.
Yeah.
The same thing goes with long crates over 96 inches. Is that?
Yeah. So some carriers are also adding limitations where they're not going to even accept anything over 96 inches.
Okay.
Like the carpet rolls that we see in the trade show industry, where
The 10-foot,
the 10
120
foot,
bags.
120, or, they shrink wrap, band them all. They're not going to accept those anymore.
Okay.
And so they're limiting the way. I guess the name of the game is how do we limit this
Sure.
going forward to being what we want. And so with those limitations being put in place, we're seeing a lot of carriers then shift over to maybe the only carrier that will accept those. Well, now we're further increasing the bottlenecks, the shortages, by pushing everything to one carrier where they'll be overwhelmed. And so that's where the communication with, a shipper like us to be able to say, where can we, branch out? Where can we use somebody else? Can we use dedicated? Is there another LTL carrier that we've never heard of that we could use? And that's where, having that communication is very important.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. So if I'm going to a trade show, is the capacity crunch, the bottlenecks and everything, how do I plan timing wise for a trade show? Typically I'd say going to Florida is 2 days, right? I mean, how does that look in today's world, trying to ship to a trade show, in a 2 day range, or typically a 2 day range?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. I would say now the way that the industry is moving, transit times are kind of extended. I would add at least 2 days on to most transit times that you see in the industry. So going to Florida, I would protect 4 days at least to get down there. It's better to be early and be sitting on a dock than to be late for your show. And so West Coast, where I'm just protecting with all our customers, I'm protecting a week. Like, let's ship it a week in advance. If we need to have tighter because of, production schedules and stuff like that, we have that discussion and say, you know what, like, we may have to expedite this. And then those options can vary. We might be able to still use LTL with a more guaranteed service, but LTL still during guaranteed, it may not be guaranteed with the way the industry is. So there's definitely options, but it's always best to just say, hey, give us as much time as we possibly need.
And I think you touched on something that's good for everyone to know when using ARC's services specifically. And this isn't the pitch or whatever, but at those last mile, that last portion, right?
Yep.
We have warehouses at all these locations.
Yeah.
So if you ship to the show ahead of time, even to Advanced Warehouse, right? You can ship ahead of time. We'll hold it for a few days prior to delivering to Advanced Warehouse or delivering to the show site, so that you're not trying to hit some timing mechanism that an LTL company might require you to do. Typical, like your YRCs or your ABFs or something like that. We can facilitate a more strategic approach to having your stuff land in that city a couple days ahead of the deadline.
Yeah,
sort of
and and there could be some fluctuation with like the Freemans, GSs, the amount of time they actually allow freight to get to their locations as well. And so we're flexible in that, be able to hold your freight for a few extra days if we want to get there before the time frame or close to the end of that time frame that they accept.
Perfect. So with that, everyone, I think what we're coming around to saying is it's about strategy.
It
right?
is.
I mean, it's about communication. It's about strategy. It's about having a partner who actually understands the industry, understands what's going on, is looking out for your best interest. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to give us a shout. You could call Tom directly. Call me directly. You could call, you could talk to anyone on the domestic team. They're all well-versed in trade show and can get you answers for whatever it is that you might need or might have a question for, because it is, I think truly the number one thing that's going to separate people who do this next phase of trade show logistics well is going to be that communication layer of understanding the customer needs, understanding the change that are happening in the industry, and being at the forefront of thinking of new and unique ways of still delivering for the customer. Thank you for joining us today. Subscribe for more content. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I want to thank Tom for being the special guest today.
Thank
we look forward to talking to you guys soon.